Hello? Hello? Hi, Gugu, can you hear me? Okay, great. Hi, Gugu, how are you doing there with the load shedding? So Gugu, we were going to speak last week possibly about the idea of yes, and my partner's father passed away from old age a week ago. And yeah, it was a good thing. It was a good thing. He was old. He was 94, and I just thought it might be an interesting topic because I know very few people ever talk about death and preparing for death and old age, and just what it's like. And I'll tell you, we did a family constellation around his death before he died, just to see if there's anything that he needs. Any unfinished business, anything that's blocking him from passing, because he was really stuck in this old age home, really, really old. And he just seemed to be, needing to go and to be helped to let go. So maybe I can share.
Something was stopping him from letting go. Is that what happens to most of us?
Yeah, so it seems like, what happens with people in old age is that they start coming up against a lot of unfinished business. Okay. And, in a way, go into turmoil and don't like to let go until they've completed their life and they have faced as much as they can. And so sometimes you find old people really holding on, at the end of their life, if they still have stuff that is holding them. So yeah, so it was interesting. I mean, I'll share a little bit about how the family constellations can help people around stuff like that, if you're interested. So basically, as I've explained, so a constellation can tap into that person's energy and that person's soul and what's going on for them, and you can kind of access information around it. And what came out, without going into too much detail, was that there was some unfinished business with the daughter. And we passed that information along, and she did some really great kind of letting go work and work from her side. And basically,
can I just ask you some questions here? When you say unfinished business, do you mean there's some forgiveness and unresolved issues between the two of them?
Yes. So it was, hurts from the past and financial issues and those kinds of things that needed to be looked at. And, so which she did. She started to look at those things, and it seemed to free him up. And what happened was, about, I don't know exactly the exact amount of time between the constellation with the intention of just seeing if there's anything we can do to support him in his transition. It was probably a month later. Basically, what happened is he sat up at 8 o'clock at night in his bed, I mean, he was 94 and he was in an old age home. He sat up clear as day, put on this incredible music, his favorite music, and lay back. And then on the morning, like 1 o'clock in the morning, on the full moon, on the equinox, he passed. So it was like a very powerful, quite profound, I suppose you could say, quite elegant death, you know, how beautiful. And I know not everyone has that kind of, you know, death and passing and stuff like that. But I think, you know, what's interesting, and I'm sure everyone's got their own ideas and kind of traditions around what you do, you know, after a soul dies. But in my opinion, after somebody transitions, they're still around. They start to see, they're in this orb, you know, in their soul is basically a ball of light, and they are not fully through the tunnel yet to the other side. They hang around for a while, they watch the activities, they watch the funeral, they listen, they look, because it's all part of their learning and lesson, you know. And yeah, so normally they're around until the funeral. They watch everything, and then when they're ready, then they pass through the tunnel to the other side, and, you know, go to what people might call heaven or the plane of bliss, or, you know, this higher realm, and go and have their review and look at their life and that kind of thing. So yeah, that's interesting. And I know, I'm sure different cultures do different things, but I know, for example, with the Buddhists, people believe that it's really important to pray and celebrate and send good love and energy to the soul that's just passed, you know, so that they get the benefit. Say again?
I'm saying, I think with most religions.
Yes, yeah, I think so. I mean, I don't know, you know, maybe you can tell me, you know, what your tradition is or what you know about that. But basically, the reason why they do that is because the soul is still benefiting from those prayers and the love, and they, in a way, they get guided by people's thoughts and prayers and love, and, you know, to this higher realm. So they continually, they're listening, and they're seeing, and they're hearing, feeling the prayers, the thoughts. So it is, you know, the Buddhists, I think they do like 30 days of prayers non-stop, and they help the soul to go through their transition, you know, to the best possible place. So anyway, interesting, you know.
Is about celebrating death. Is that what it's about more than anything else? Because what we are trying to do, we're trying to make all this understand. And we're trying to just unpack, you know, what's exactly.
Yeah, so how does it relate to family constellations? So constellations talks about the fact that you can tap into the energy of the soul no matter where they are. I wouldn't say, I mean, I haven't really thought long about what constellations would say directly about death, but basically people are not gone as such, you know. Similar to the African traditional wisdom values, they would become an ancestor, and they would be able to be accessed at some point in the future just through consciousness and intention and focus and prayer. Then you can still access that person as an ancestor. And you can actually still work with them, even though they're not in the body anymore. You can work with them on, if they say, for example, had a traumatic death, they are unresolved, that kind of thing. I mean, I think that's probably the key to what constellations is about. It's the fact that even though you're not physically present there, you can still work with those people, those beings.
Okay, so how do we
Yes,
How,
yes.
how do they really come to terms with the fact that the person has chosen this path and the fact that the person is in the right place?
You mean if somebody's just lost a loved one?
Yes, if they still dealing with, most people might even wear dark or black clothes for a period of time because they think it's a very sad color and sad time for them.
Yes, I think I don't know a lot about working with people with death. I've done a little bit of work with people on it. And I think, basically, if people really, like the Buddhists, I'm just using the Buddhists again, they say, have a good death. They talk about having a good death. And it means that we must consider how we live our life so that when we die happy, peaceful, and we don't leave, a lot of pain behind us. We leave, peace, and we leave things sorted in our lives. So I guess people, it's as much about the people that are still alive that need to be thinking about leading their life really impeccably, telling the truth, being honest, taking care of the people that are around you, that kind of thing. And that leads to a good flow in life and a good flow in death, because then you can peacefully transition.
Yeah.
And, for me, my personal beliefs is that death is really not the end at all, and that you have choices. You can go on into other realms. You can come back. You can have another life. It's just that we have this illusion that we are this one body, and that's the beginning and the end. But that's not my belief at all.
Well, Amanda, this is opening some insights, especially for me here. You talk about family constellation, talk about people who are preparing for their death. It is important for us to live our truth. As I posted yesterday, that's what we were talking about on the show yesterday.
Yes, I really loved that post. I thought it was so brave.
It is brave, because people wanna. We don't know what we're doing, actually. I don't want to dance or just point fingers, or we just don't know what we're doing. It's to say, I will live my truth. And I will, every time I open my mouth, I will tell the truth. Even if it hurts, even if I don't know about something, I will tell my truth. Is that clearing something about me? That is clearing something for me, right? In terms of my spiritual life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I suppose, it's a journey learning to speak your truth. And if you sit on your voice for a very long time, then speaking your truth can come out like an explosion. But if you get, more used to putting out your truth and your voice, then you can become a bit more skilled at it. And then it doesn't necessarily have to hurt. But it is a very interesting topic, and I think it is tied into this whole thing of the soul's journey and what is this life really about? What are we really doing here? Because a lot of people don't actually have a clue, and what we're doing here and who we are and what we're made of and that kind of thing. So, for example, what you see, like with old people who develop Alzheimer's, or dementia, is that they lose their memory of things, but they are still very much there. So they're not their past, but then, and they're not able to access their memories because there's a calcification of the brain, of one part of the brain. But you still see the spirit. The spirit of the person is very much present. And, almost like a child, they don't have... Yeah, so people when they get old, that's the pattern, is that people when they get old, they start to go back, almost regress to childhood. They become more and more and more like children. And it's actually fine, it's okay, because the vulnerability must come. And with that softening and becoming more childlike, they start to, it's kind of like review their life, which is a natural process. See what see what their life was about and where they did the right things and where they may have been super controlling, and then they've got a little bit of time to make it up and say that they're sorry. But I mean, I guess the benefit of family constellations really is saying, it's the opposite, I guess, of maybe a religious message. It's not over when you die. You have to still live your best life, but you can still communicate through channels. You can still communicate through psychic channels, maybe traditional healers. There are ways to still complete your unfinished business. So that's very much the job of the family constellation. Maybe somebody died a traumatic death. They didn't have time to complete it. You can help them through the constellations work.
Wonderful, wonderful, Amanda. As a healer, and as we are growing into awareness as people, I find that it's easy to understand energy, to understand people's energy. So family, family constellations where you teach them to understand the energy, the energy in the house, the energy of the person, that's us.
Yes, that I mean this, and that's, yeah, that there is no end really, and there is no real separation. It's just the end of, it's like getting out of a car, that you've identified with, but your body is like the car. It's not over. You're still there. You've just left the vehicle, And so we've kind of forgotten, well, not, maybe it's more the white Western world has forgotten how to live this continuity of consciousness, and so people are, I guess, starting to remember that it's, death is not the end.
Death is not the end. Amanda, just before you leave, last week, I'm sorry that we were disturbed by your setting, but I had a very interesting message from one of our listeners who was telling me about her sister who passed on. Her husband shot her and shot himself.
Wow.
In the kitchen of that house.
Wow.
And it happened to come back, and when they were selling the house, they sold the house, and the buyers of the house, also the new occupants, could hear these sounds at the time that they died.
Wow.
At 8 hours of the morning, they would hear these sounds, and they wouldn't understand what was going on. And they paid for the house and all of those things. And she wanted to find out what could be done, because now they had to move out of the house.
Yes, so they need to do a clearing because the trauma in the house is still there, and it's like a bit of a haunting. So what can happen is that if there's a traumatic end, those souls that had that experience are still in trauma and in shock. And so their experience, they are not complete. They are probably confused. They don't know what happened. So what you can do, you can get someone either to work with the souls through a constellation to help come to completion. That is absolutely possible. So, for those that haven't done a constellation yet, it's really something to behold when you have the actual experience of seeing the soul's energy kind of manifest in the room, and the person that's standing there is just like a little chess piece or like a little representative for them. But the energy of that soul can be worked with through the person that's standing there, almost like a channel. And so those people that died traumatically can be contacted, they can be worked with, you know, if it's right, and you can help them bring completion to that experience, and then that house should be clear, you know. Amazing that we can do this. I mean, we've forgotten that we can do these things. We just go through the rituals, we just do the prayers, but we've forgotten that we're actually contacting somebody who's, you know, you kind of know it, but we don't speak about it.
Yeah, it's a lot, you know. And you know, this show, the digital comedy, we are, you know, pushing some boundaries, making some boundaries.
Good for you.
That's I want us to talk about this people. I want to normalize the normal things.
Yes.
We talk about behind closed doors. Now we're going to talk about it out loud, you know, so that people can get something.
You know, I think what's important, I think sometimes what can happen is that people get very put off African traditional healing because of there can be misuse and black magic, and, you know, some of the, like these black magic wars, and people think that they're being controlled by this, you know, magic and that magic. So that can become very off-putting for people, and they're like, no, I'm not interested, you know. But I think that, you know, you have to, first of all, you have to choose your practitioner. You have to, you know, just say, okay, I'm not interested in anyone who does any kind of black magic. You know, it needs to be aligned to your beliefs. It needs to be completely respectful. The person needs to always retain their choice and their right to choose. You know, like, you don't ever say to a person who you're working with, this is how it is, and therefore that's the end of the story. You never say that. You show something, or something reveals itself in the field, say, for example, maybe in the workshop, through people that are standing there as representatives, some information comes through, and it's just an offering. It's like, okay, well, that's there. Is it relevant? Isn't it? It doesn't matter if it's not relevant. You just let it go. So you never, ever force someone to, you know, it doesn't have to be like a fortune teller. I always say to people, you can create your own reality, you can make your own choices, have your own thoughts about this. This is just an offering. So you can take it or leave it. That's very important.
Thank you so much, Amanda. We'll speak again next Thursday. And I hope, you know, we are going to create a page as well on Facebook where we can interact with our listeners, because people are curious about this, but they don't want to come out about it. They contact me behind, you know, privately.
Well, that's great. At least it's getting out, so you're doing a good job.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Okay, such a pleasure. Thanks, Gugu. Thank you.